Welfare has a special political meaning to the United States because it refers to how the poor receives financial aid. In comparison, welfare services are regarded as a universal right in other regions like Europe, where it is believed that all citizens should be able to obtain a minimal level of social support and well-being. Honeybee colony collapse disorder has been reported by beekeepers around the world. There are several theories as to why worker bees suddenly leave the hive and their queen. But American military research facility near Washington may have identified at least part of the answer. The current measure has remained virtually unchanged over the past 30 years. Yet during that time, there have been marked changes in the nation's economy and society and in public policies that have affected families' economy well-being, which are not reflected in the measure. Botanic gardens are scientific and cultural institutions established to collect, study, exchange and display plants for research and for the education and the enjoyment of the public. There are major botanic gardens in each capital city. Zoological parks and aquariums are primarily engaged in the breeding, preservation, study and display of native and/or exotic fauna in captivity. Market research is a vital part of the planning of any business. However, experienced you and your staff may be in a particular field, if you are thinking of introducing a service to a new area. It is important to find out what the local population thinks about it first. The speaker is a marine biologist who became interested in the strandlopers, an ancient people who live on the coastline, because of their connection to the sea. Their way of life intrigued him. As a child, he had spent a lot of time by the sea, exploring and collecting things, so he began to study them, and discovered some interesting information about their way of life, how they hunted, what tools they used, and so on. Researchers gathered 160 uncaffeinated adults, people who consumed less than 500 milligrams of caffeine a week. These decaf subjects looked at pictures of various objects, then took either a placebo or a pill containing 200 milligrams of caffeine. That's roughly the amount you'd get from 2 cups of coffee. There are perhaps 3 ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful, and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room. In other words, function combined with aesthetics, and yet others see furniture as a form of art. Not a lot is known about how the transportation of goods by water first began. Large cargo boats were being used in some parts of the world up to 5,000 years ago. However, sea trade became more widespread when large sailing boats traveled between ports, carrying spices, perfumes, and objects made by hand. As a historian, if you really want to understand the sensibilities of those who lived in the past, you must be like a novelist and get into the skins of characters and think and feel as they do. You are asked to imagine what it's like to be a peasant in medieval times, asking the sort of questions a peasant might ask. What the writer is saying is that a historian needs imaginative sympathy with ordinary people in the past. Humans need to use energy in order to exist. So it is unsurprising that the way people have been producing energy is largely responsible for current environmental problems. Pollution comes in many forms, but those that are most concerning, because of their impact on health, result from the combustion of fuels in power stations and cars. A recent trend in the entertainment world is to adapt classic works of literature for either TV or movies. One argument is that this is to everyone's benefit, as it introduces people to works they might otherwise never have, but is rarely done successfully. History rubs shoulders and often overlaps with many other areas of research, from myths and epics to the social sciences, including economics, politics, biograph, demography, and much else besides. Some histories are almost pure narratives, while others go in for detailed, tightly focused analyses of, for example, the parish records of a Cornish village in the 16th century. In the Middle Ages, the design and use of flags were considered a means of identifying social status. Flags were, therefore, the symbols not of nations, but of the nobility. The design of each flag resembled the devices on the noble's coat of arms, and the size of the flag was an indication of how high the owner stood in the nobility. Many papers you write in college will include quotes from one or more sources. Even if you don't have to do it, integrating a few quotes into your writing can add life and persuasiveness to your arguments. The key is to use quotes to support a point you're trying to make rather than just include them to fill space. A university is a lot more than just classes and exams. University is a concept that offers you a host of possibilities to develop both academically and personally. Find out about the different projects, clubs, and societies that are in your university. You will definitely find something you are interested in. Moods may also have an effect on how information is processed, by influencing the extent to positive moods promote more holistic and top-down processing style, while negative moods recruit more stimulus-driven and bottom-up processing, which judges rely on pre-existing, internal information, or focus on new, external information. Integration is increasingly needed in the business environment. This need emerges from the efficiency and synergy requirements necessary in a complex and turbulent environment. In other words, integration is needed to facilitate coordination, which is, again, related to the building of competitive advantage. Rice took a stab at settling the argument with a meta-analysis, a study of studies on whether people can really perceive better than CD quality sound. He analyzed data from 18 studies, including more than 400 participants and nearly 13,000 listening tests. Overall, listeners picked out the better than CD quality track 52.3% of the time. Statistically significant, if not all that impressive. There are three main interpretations of the English Revolution. The longest lasting interpretation was that the revolution was the almost inevitable outcome of an age-old struggle between Parliament and Crown. The second sees it as a class struggle, and a lead up to the French and other revolutions. Finally, the third interpretation sees the other two as too fixed, not allowing for unpredictability, and that the outcome could have gone either way. that tsunamis could provide crucial information about the habitability of ancient Mars. The first one occurred when the planet must have been relatively warm and amenable for life, because it carved out backwash channels as it returned to the sea. By contrast, the planet had become much cooler by the time the second tsunami hit the waters. Apparently flash froze after flowing the surface. Thompson recognized and exploited all the ingredients of a successful amusement ride, writes Judith A. Adams in the American amusement park industry. His coasters combined an appearance of danger with actual safety, thrilled riders with exhilarating speed, and allowed the public to intimately experience the Industrial Revolution's new technologies of gears, steel, and dazzling electric lights. Usually, age is determined by physical characteristics, such as teeth or bones. Great if you have a body. Researchers have tried successfully to use blood. But in this study, the scientists used immune cells called T cells recognize invaders through receptors that match molecules on bacteria, viruses, even tumors. The cellular activity that produces these receptors also produces a type of circular DNA molecule as a byproduct. For the purposes of argument, culture is divided into material and non-material, and the speaker's aim is to show how they both affect each other. Material developments in tools and technology can affect non-material culture, our customs and beliefs, and the other way around. Genetics is used as an example as it has changed the way we think about life, but also our beliefs have affected its rate of development. Networking is easy and fun because it taps into this human predilection to talk about ourselves when asked. Consider successful networking as little more than the process of guiding a person to tell you about his life, what he's doing, the company that employs him, and his current industry. The second group that is particularly vulnerable are night shift workers, and the third group that is particularly vulnerable are people with sleep disorders, particularly sleep apnea. 1 out of 3 men and 1 out of 6 women have sleep apnea. And yet, 85% are undiagnosed and untreated. And it more than doubles the risks of crashes. It's not that human activities didn't impact wildlife at all, of course. Heavily hunted species, like white-tailed deer, gray squirrels, and raccoons, were photographed somewhat less often in hunted areas. Coyotes showed up more often in hunted areas. While most species didn't avoid hiking trails, the predators actually preferred them. Dolphins, whales, and porpoises are social animals, but some species are more sociable than others. This depends on the environment because a species adopts the lifestyle most suitable for this. Among dolphins, forming makes it easier for them to find food, reproduce, and gain knowledge. They are safer too, because dolphins can communicate danger when there are threats around. The elaborate and refined Japanese tea ceremony is meant to demonstrate respect, through grace and good etiquette as demonstrated here by Jinshitsu Sen, 15th Grand Master of the Eurocent Tea School. Cheerful sunny yellow is an attention getter. While it is considered an optimistic color, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms, and babies will cry more. It is the most difficult color for the eye to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused. Yellow enhances concentration, hence its use for legal pads. It also speeds metabolism. Introverts, or those of us with introverted tendencies, tend to recharge by spending time alone. They lose energy from being around people for long periods of time, particularly large crowds. Extroverts, on the other hand, gain energy from other people. Extroverts actually find their energy is sapped when they spend too much time alone. They recharge by being social. For centuries, Atlantis has been one of the Western world's favorite legends, a tantalizing blend of fantasy and mystery. Stories tell of a rich and glorious empire that was lost to the sea, where some hope its ruins still lie, waiting to be discovered. Using more than 50 interviews, award-winning writer Danny Danziger creates a fascinating mosaic of the people behind New York's magnificent Metropolitan Museum of Art, from the aristocratic, acerbic director of the museum, Philippe de Montebello, to the curators who have a deep knowledge and passionate appreciation of their collections, from the security guards to the philanthropists who keep the museum's financial lifeblood flowing. The most significant difference between an eating disorder and disordered eating is whether or not a person's symptoms and experiences align with the criteria defined by the American Psychiatric Association. The term disordered eating is a descriptive phrase, not a diagnosis. We want a recreation in adulthood of what it felt like to be administered to and indulged. In a secret part of our minds, we picture someone who will understand our needs, bring us what we want, to be immensely patient and sympathetic to us, act selflessly, and make it all better. Many individuals have unwittingly contributed to this book through sharing ideas with us as colleagues, students, practitioners, tourists, and residents of destination areas. They are too numerous to thank individually. And indeed, it is not possible to isolate exactly their specific contributions. This report includes a huge swath of macroeconomics, such as the effects of tax reform, a new industrial policy, and understanding how to deal with the uncertainty inherent in global financial market. But it also covers key areas of microeconomic policies, such as boosting laggardly rates of productivity. We've spent a lot of money over the last 70 years on flood control, and it's protected millions of people and has saved us billions of dollars. We've built dams to hold back the waters. We've built levees to keep the water off the people, and we've raised the ones that were originally started in 1718. We can see from this raise that at an early stage of painting, a window was painted in at the left of the portrait. It seems that there may have been two windows in the initial design for the portrait, or that the window was moved at an early stage. The central idea of this book concerns our blindness with respect to randomness, particularly the large deviations. Why do we, scientists or non-scientists, hotshots or regular Joes, tend to see the pennies instead of the dollars? Why do we keep focusing on the minutiae, not the possible significant large events, in spite of the obvious evidence of their huge influence? The COVID-19 pandemic may be triggering early puberty in some girls. Several studies suggest the outbreak is increasing the number of girls going through premature sexual development, and experts are unsure why. In the latest of a string of studies, researchers at the University of Bonn, Germany, reported how the number of girls diagnosed with early puberty at a single medical center remained constant between 2015 and 2019, at fewer than 10 cases a year. The role of women in promoting voluntary medical male circumcision uptake. Research reveals the important role played by women in influencing men to undergo circumcision. Women are also motivated to convince men to undergo male circumcision because of the benefits associated with them, such as reduction of HIV transmission and cervical cancer. Every few seconds, our eyelids automatically shutter and our eyeballs roll back into their sockets. So why doesn't blinking plunge us into intermittent darkness and light? New research shows that the brain works extra hard to stabilize our vision despite our fluttering eyes. When our eyeballs roll back in their sockets during a blink, they don't always return to the same spot when we reopen our eyes. Changes in climate affect, for example, the plant and animal life of a given area. The presence of coal beds in North America and Europe, along with evidence of glaciation in these same areas, indicates that they must have experienced alternately warmer and colder climates than they now possess. Summer research scholarships offer a unique opportunity for external organizations, academics, and students to work together in research. Working with globally recognized researchers in a local setting, students gain valuable real-world experience as well as insight into what research is all about. Political scholars have historically recognized the social love of mass media. The impact of the mass media on the electric and governing process has greatly increased over the last 50 years. Tomorrow, the mass media will become the central nervous system for your society and the major source of public information. Deep brain stimulation, DBS, to the superolateral branch of the medial forebrain bundle, MFB, which is linked to reward and motivation, revealed metabolic brain changes over 12 months post-DBS implantation, making it a strong potential therapy for treatment-resistant depression, according to researchers. James Webb Space Telescope was specifically designed to observe this light, which comes from some of the oldest galaxies to take form. How did early stars and galaxies take shape? What about the cosmic material that is undetectable, known as dark matter? Is there evidence for it in the early eons of the universe? These are some of the perplexing and fascinating questions that astronomers can begin unraveling with Webb. Investigations like this one have been plodding along for 40 years, and some studies, like one following the deadly Kobe quake in 1995, have found similar correlations. But study author Alistair Skelton, a professor of geochemistry at Stockholm University, says the unpredictable subjective study makes it tough to get funding because you can in no way guarantee a result. So I'll get 3 years of money, but if there's no earthquake. Research has shown that the gut microbiome is important for human physiology and health. Disturbances to the composition of the gut microbiome can be associated with chronic diseases such as gastrointestinal inflammatory disorders, neurological, cardiovascular, and respiratory illnesses. The human body has evolved strategies to ensure that a symbiotic relationship exists between the microbes in our gut and our cells. Research has found we pursue more rewards when we become habituated to a higher standard of living and compare ourselves to various standards. What it takes to be happy depends on our prior expectations, but these expectations see cool room temperature inhibited cancer growth in mice. Mice acclimatized to temperatures of 4 degrees Celsius had significantly slower tumor growth and lived nearly twice as long compared with mice in rooms of 30 degrees Celsius because they were burning more brown fat. And change over time. One of the major factors influencing future home design will be the probable change in climate, with hotter summers, colder winters, and the possibility of floods. Consequently, houses will be built with better insulation and will also need ways of keeping cool in hot weather, whether that's air conditioning or more shading of windows. The dyes and pigments available in any particular period in which a specific color photographic process was invented, manufactured, and used have profound effects on the quality of color that defines most of the style and particular historical period. The problem is that increased immune vigilance has a side effect: allergies. Our speculation is that this is some kind of trade-off. In the past, you needed to resist some kind of pathogen, and the trade-off or sacrifice you have to make is increased responsiveness to non-pathogenic allergens. So next time some of you get the springtime sniffles, blame your distant ancestor, the one with the heavy brow ridge. As the inventor of alternating current technology, Nikola Tesla played a paramount role in the electricity used to power the entire world. Tesla also worked diligently on a dream of supplying electrical power without wires. Thomas Edison was also instrumental in shaping society today with his inventions. Edison's design of the inside of the light bulb was the crucial key to making a light that would stay lit for hours instead of going out almost immediately. Japan is the world's calculator superpower. Japanese manufacturers have led sales of calculators for over 30 years in many countries. Even in the age of personal computers, calculators are still essential in accounting jobs. In addition, calculators with graphing capabilities have begun to be used in education. Countries bordering the Mediterranean have built up a solid reputation for sunshine and great tasting food, as well as impressive health statistics featuring some of the lowest rates of heart disease and increased life expectancy. This has created a lot of attention towards tea. Cloud seeding, a form of weather modification, is a way of attempting to change the amount of precipitation that comes from clouds. Cloud seeding is carried out by dispersing substances into the air, but it also occurs due to ice nucleates in nature, most of which are bacterial in origin. Whether salamander, frog, or toad, amphibians are some of the most diverse and far-flung animals on the planet. However, they're disappearing, and experts are worried since frogs are considered bellwethers for the environment. Their double life makes them unique. It's through their skin that they breathe and drink water because their skin is so permeable. What produces these effects are familiar to neuroscientists: external light and dark signals that help set our daily, or circadian, rhythms, clock genes that act as internal timekeepers, and neurons that signal to one another through connections called synapses. But how these factors interact to freshen a brain once we do sleep has remained enigmatic. The executive residence in the White House in the United States of America, where the president resides, is divided into several wings. It also includes the vice president's and president's staff's offices. This government building is a national heritage. If you do experience a motorcycle crash, be aware that the other driver will most likely blame you for the accident. This includes the road conditions, any skid marks, road signs, construction, and anything else that may have contributed to the accident. Not every accident requires an attorney, but a knowledgeable local attorney can help you make sense of the process, as well as ensure that the other driver's insurance doesn't unfairly blame you for the accident. Many people are under the impression that the water which comes out of a plant is clean. This is a common misconception. The function of a plant is to make the water cleaner, but it's not clean enough to drink. It could be used in irrigation. What a plant is trying to do is simply speed up a process that would naturally occur given more time. This means that a plant can create water that is safe to enter back into the water system as it's so heavily diluted. The river then continues the water purification, acting as a form of the fourth stage. Electric vehicles have arrived. With technology led by Tesla and all of the world's major car manufacturers following along behind, electric vehicles are now a common sight on the roads of most developed countries. Yet the situation in less developed countries is rather different. The only African country to have started the change to electric vehicles is South Africa. Based on the results from this study, we hypothesized that a high-protein diet coupled with low carbohydrate intake would be beneficiary for prevention of bone loss in adults. However, randomized clinical trials or longitudinal studies are needed to further assess our findings. Neutron stars, the compressed remains of massive stars gone supernova, are the densest normal objects in the known universe. Black holes are technically denser, but far from normal. Just a single sugar cube worth of neutron star material would weigh 100 million tons here on Earth, or about the same as the entire human population. The classic era of Mayan came to an end around 900 AD. Why this happened is unclear. The cities were probably over-farming the land, so that a period of drought led to famine. Recent geological research supports this, as there appears to have been a 200-year drought around this time. Our survivors have told me many times that hate starts small and it grows when your neighbors, workmates, and friends ignore it and do nothing. Hate triumphs when intolerance and prejudice become ingrained across an entire society, from the pages of newspapers to the halls of government, from schoolrooms to boardrooms. Countries bordering the Mediterranean have built up a solid reputation for sunshine and great tasting food, as well as impressive health statistics featuring some of the lowest rates of heart disease and increased life expectancy. This has created a lot of attention towards tea. If you do experience a motorcycle crash, be aware the other driver will most likely blame you for the accident. This includes the road conditions, any skid marks, road signs, construction, and anything else that may have contributed to the accident. Not every accident requires an attorney, but a knowledgeable local attorney can help you make sense of the process, as well as ensure that the other driver's insurance doesn't unfairly blame you for the accident. The scientists found that division of reproductive labor in ants arose when an ancient insulin signaling pathway, typically involved in maintaining nutrition and growth, became responsive to social cues. In doing so, they also uncovered deeper insights into a process underlying how the environment gets under the skin to affect behavior, physiology, and the health and well-being of other members of a society. Intangible assets perform a number of distinctive functions in the life of each company. Firstly, they witness the prosperity of the firm and its good name. Such a position allows human resource management to employ professional workers and increase labor productivity. Moreover, intangible assets guarantee future value for the firm. And although it is difficult to destroy intangible assets, they can lose their importance in case of carelessness or business failure. Japan is the world's calculator superpower. Japanese manufacturers have led sales of calculators for over 30 years in many countries. Even in the age of personal computers, calculators are still essential in accounting jobs. In addition, calculators with graphing capabilities have begun to be used in education. Extrovert tend to move quickly and try to influence situations directly, while introvert give themselves time to develop their insights before exposing them to the world. Extroverts are happy making decisions in the thick of events, while introvert wants to reflect before taking actions. How quickly is the world population growing? In the United States and other developed countries, the current growth rate is very low. In the most developing countries, the human population is growing at the rate nearly 3 people per second. Because of this bursting growth rate, the human population is well on its way to reaching 9 billions within your lifetime. Despite many similarities that literacy political debate in other nation, there are also ways in which the cultural and political situations in Scotland had left these studies of colleges literatures in significantly different literacy conditions from that study in many other parts of the world. Competence in mathematics was another trouble spot. More than half said that their real task schools graduates are deficient in mathematics. More than 10% of respondents said colleges graduates are deficient in the subject, while 70% said they are adequate. Although it come from a remote region in the Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers. Brought to the UK in 1839, it quickly escaped from colonized river banks and damp woodlands. Now it is spreading across Europe. Weakness in electronics, auto and gas station sales dragged down overall retail sales last month, but excluding those three categories, retailers enjoyed healthy increases across the board, according to government figures released Wednesday. Moreover, December sales numbers were also revised higher. Domestication is an evolutionary, rather than a political development. They were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Humans provided the animals with food and protection, in exchange for which the animals provided the humans their milk and eggs and yes their flesh.